Hello, Accounting Superstars. This is Professor Don Bush from the Accounting Superstar channel. Glad you're here. I've been a professor for about 30 years and a CPA for about that long, and I've got great ways to explain accounting. So welcome aboard. Today, we are about to have a big lightning storm. Lightning storms are pretty cool here where I live. I live up in the mountains above Denver, up in Conifer, Colorado at 8,500 feet. And sometimes we get some pretty wicked lightning storms rolling through, and one is rolling through right about now. So if you hear thunder in the microphone, that's exactly what it is. So today's lesson is about absorption costing, and it's something that's kind of advanced. It's something that's not real easy to understand. And I have to tell you, after teaching hundreds and hundreds of students, most students never catch this. A few do, but most don't. And it took me a long time to figure it out too. Now, I made a previous video about absorption costing, and you can find it on accountingsuperstars.com. Everything that I make, I have a link to on accountingsuperstars.com. You can find the videos by topic, so it's a lot easier. Now, this absorption costing here, it really messes up the accounting system. Oh, looks like my dog just came down here too, Chewy. I think you've met Chewy here before. Let's see if you can see him. Oh, you can see his tail a little bit. But anyways, this absorption costing, it's required by generally accepted accounting principles. And it really messes up the income statement. It's like, why do we do this? But if you haven't learned by now, accounting is very imperfect. It's not perfect at all. A lot of outsiders, people who don't understand accounting, think that it's like science or math or something, and it's not at all. And so this lesson's about how absorption costing messes up the income statement, and it all boils down to fixed manufacturing overhead. In fact, when you take managerial accounting, probably your second semester accounting class, I think they could rename that class to how fixed manufacturing overhead screws everything up. That's the common theme throughout the whole class. So, and this is the case here today too. So let's get started and see how it goes. And my dog here wants to be petted. So too bad the camera can't show him. But here we go. Let's see here, absorption costing number 2. So what happens during an inventory drawdown? So what's going on? We have Sunset Sailboat Company, and they make sailboats. And here's some things that are going on. Information for both 2001, 2002 here. Years 2001, 2002 are identical, except for the number of sailboats produced. So what I did is I made this lesson kind of unrealistic, where both years are totally identical. Sales are identical, revenues identical, all administrative selling expenses are identical. Everything's identical. The only difference is the number of sailboats produced. So here we go. The second item here, 25 sailboats produced in 2001 and 15 sailboats produced in 2002. So I'm going to give you a heads up here, is that in the first year, more than enough sailboats were produced. And so some of the sailboats were put into inventory, all right, finished goods inventory. And then in 2002, the second year, they didn't make enough sailboats, and so some of those sailboats had to be pulled out of inventory to be sold. So it sounds kind of simple, but it really messes up the income statement big time, and it shouldn't, but it does. And by the way, there's a way around it, and it's called variable costing. And I like variable costing. I think it makes a lot of sense, but unfortunately, it's not allowed through GAAP, Generally Accepted Accounting Principles. Kind of crazy, huh? So here we go, coming down to the income statement. So here we are. Here, the first column is 2001, second column is 2002. And in both years, 20 boats were sold. So if you think, well, if everything's the same and 20 boats are sold both years, well, why aren't the income statements identical? And you'll find out why here. And this is the problem with absorption costing. So sales, $2 million in 2001 and $2 million in 2002. But I've got cost of goods sold invisible here because I wanted to make a point on this. And so cost of goods sold in the first year is $1,460,000. And in the second year, it's $1,540,000. And it's like, well, this is weird. This is odd. Everything's supposed to be the same. We sold the same number of boats. I mean, what's the big deal? Well, as I'm telling you guys, it's the number of boats produced, which is odd. I mean, it's really odd that it affects this. So gross profit's going to be different. So gross profit in the first year looks great. Gross profit in the second year is still great, but it's not as good as the first year. And selling administrative expenses are identical. And so we end up with a net income in the first year of $240,000. So it looks super good. And then in the second year, not so good. It's like, wow, that's a big decrease. And so this would really throw off investors, the owners of the company, the managers, the banks. The banks would be wondering what's going on here. And to tell you the end result here in a nutshell is that the company's not doing any better or any worse. It's doing the exact same. It's just the way our accounting works, which is too bad. And so so as an investor, and I hope many of you will become investors and be able to, put money aside and grow a nest egg and buy a house and, invest in the stock market and so on and so forth. And so got to be watching for this stuff. It's very subtle, very, very subtle, and very few people understand this. I don't know what the odds of anybody understanding this is, but hopefully by the end of this lesson, you'll be one of them, all right? Okay, so we got a problem. The company's doing identical in both years, but their net income is really off and weird, and looks like they're doing worse in the second year, and everybody's scratching their head why. So coming down here, so let's dig into cost of goods sold a little deeper. So here's what's going on. Direct labor is the exact same thing for each year, $750,000, and that's the amount of labor that was used to, build boats and work on boats. And direct materials is also identical. Okay, also identical. Manufacturing overhead, though, this is where things are different. Right, so things are quite different here. 210,000, 290,000. All right. And so cost of goods sold, well, that ends up being different. In fact, as we already know, in the first year, cost of goods sold for the first year is less than cost of goods sold in the second year. And the problem seems to be this manufacturing overhead. And that's why I highlighted it in bright red so it would stand out, kind of give you a clue along the ways. Because, folks, this stuff it's difficult as it is. I'm trying to make it as easy as possible for you. And by the way, if you're struggling to understand this, you're normal, okay? You're a normal person. I think most people would not get this. So if you're not getting it, it's okay. Don't worry about it. But just rewind, watch it again, watch it a third time. And by the way, hit the like and subscribe button too. All right? But it's normal. And I struggled with it also. I mean, once you get it, now I get it. But all right. But I've been doing it for like 30 years. All right. So let's dig into this manufacturing overhead a little bit closer, all right? Because that seems to be the difference. So let's scoot in on that. So variable manufacturing overhead, $50,000 for each year. And like I said, well, things are the same, for both years. They're doing exactly the same thing for both years. And the odd thing is that it's not the same. All right. So fixed overhead included in cost of goods sold. Here is where things are weird. And I highlighted it in bright red, fixed overhead included in cost of goods sold, so it would stand out. So check this out. Things are supposed to be the same each year. And there's 160 in the first year, 240,000 in the second year. That doesn't make any sense. So total manufacturing overhead is quite different from year to year. Pretty weird since everything's supposed to be the same. And fixed overhead is supposed to be fixed. I mean, the word fixed means stay the same, all right? But it's not staying the same, clearly. So let's dig into that fixed overhead included in cost of goods sold and see if we can sort this out here. So here we go. Now this next table here, I've got it labeled as table 4. We're not going to quite answer the question at this point here. We're almost there, but not quite. So total fixed manufacturing overhead for the year, well, 200,000 and 200,000. I mean, both years are the same. You know, they're operating the same both years. And fixed manufacturing overhead is supposed to be fixed. Now, the number of sailboats produced. Well, in the first year, 25 sailboats were produced, all right? So if we do a little division, that's 200,000 divided by 25 equals $8,000. So the fixed overhead per boat is $8,000. And I have to tell you, there's the problem. Right there's the problem, folks. Anytime you put fixed overhead on a per unit basis, you're going to run into problems, all right? And that's the problem. Big warning sign. Problem. Maybe we ought to highlight it in some big yellow thing here. That's the problem right there. Anytime you do this, you're going to run into problems. But unfortunately, that's how generally accepted accounting principles work. We're supposed to do it this way. Absorption costing. All right. So coming into the next year, well, fixed overhead is 200,000, and how many boats were produced in the second year? Well, 15. Well, if you go 200,000 divided by 15, you come up with 13,330, and that's a problem too. Like I said, anytime you put fixed overhead per boat or per product, you're asking for trouble. You will get screwy bad answers, okay? It's going to happen, but it's just what we do here, you know? All right. So now you know why. That's exactly why right there. All right. Now, this table 5 here, I tried to make it as easy as I could, and it's kind of long and convoluted, but I think it's as easy as I can make it. So just follow along. And if you have to back up, rewind the video, watch it again. No big deal. Okay. So here we go. The number of sailboats sold for each year was 20 sailboats. And the boats produced during the year, well, 25 in year 1, 15 in year 2. And we found out from the table up above that the fixed overhead per boat produced was 8,000 and 13,333. And I think you can still see that on your screen up here. And I have it highlighted in yellow, meaning that's the problem. That's the root problem right there. Anytime you do that, you're going to have problems. So, okay, subtotal. Okay, I've got a note here, LIFO. And when I was making this up, I thought, okay, I'm going to assume a LIFO inventory system. A lot of you might say, oh, man, I struggled with LIFO, last in, first out. I think I've got a few videos on that. I think, yeah. And check it out, accountingsuperstars.com. You can look it up. Okay, fixed overhead included in cost of goods sold. All right, so here's all I did, folks, is 20 times 8,000, and you get 160,000. Now, you might say, well, why didn't you use the 25 boats? Why did you use the 20 boats? Well, the reason why is we're talking about cost of goods sold. What was sold? Well, how many boats were sold? 20 boats were sold. And the fixed overhead was 8,000, so that comes up to 160,000. Hey, while we're at it, let's just do the same thing over here. All right. So 20 boats were sold. Oh, I'm sorry. Here, using the last in, first out here, is that we produced 15 at 13,333, and I think that's what I did. Yeah, it is. I'm pretty sure. Let me double check my math here. Okay, 57, 58. Yep, that's what I did. Okay, now, so here's what's going on, is that I'm assuming a last in, first out inventory system. And in this problem here, it wouldn't matter which inventory system you use. It all worked the same. But anyways, the 15 boats produced, they were the last ones in to inventory. And so I'm assuming they're the first ones out. Okay, so 15 were produced and sold at 13,333, and you get 200,000. And you might be wondering, where do you get the 1333? We got it right up above here, folks. Right up above. That was the step. Right up here. The fixed overhead's 200,000 a year, divided by the 15 boats produced equals 13,333. All right. So back to year 1. Back to the first column here. All right, number of boats placed into ending inventory, 5 boats. Yeah, and here's why, is because 20 boats were sold, and they produced 25 boats, so that means they've got five extra boats, all right? And the fixed overhead assigned per boat, well, $8,000, 8,000. We get it from here, and if you're wondering, well, where did we get that from? Right up here, all right? So it all feeds into itself. Now, I didn't need these lines in here, all right? I didn't need these lines in here. So coming down to this line here. So the fixed overhead assigned to ending inventory. Well, 5 boats are going into ending inventory at $8,000 fixed overhead each. Do a little math, you get $40,000. All right, so total fixed manufacturing overhead included in cost of goods sold. Now, folks, I'm going to give you a clue here. It's not going to be the 160 plus the 40. Here's what it is. It's going to be 160,000, and you might say, why? What's going on here? Okay, I'm going to back up a bit. The grand total of the fixed overhead was 200,000. It comes from right up here. Now, 160,000 of it was sold, cost of goods sold. And the other 40,000 was placed into inventory. All right, so the amount going to cost of goods sold, 160,000. There we are. So let's finish up the second column here. So I'll start right here where there's no numbers at all, okay? Number of boats placed into ending inventory. Well, there weren't any put into ending inventory because they sold 20 and they only made 15, so they didn't have any extra boats, all right? So let's skip down a bit. Let's skip down to here. LIFO inventory, I just wrote that in just to remind myself. LIFO, last in, first out. Okay, boats removed from inventory and sold. Well, 5 boats were removed. And why were they removed? Because they sold 20. They only made 15, so they needed 5 more, and so that was the 5 they pulled out. Now, it just so happens it's the same 5 here. And the fixed overhead per boat removed is 8,000, which comes from there, okay? And so 5 times 8 is, here we go, subtotal, fixed overhead included in cost of goods sold. Okay, I think I could have labeled that a little bit better there. Fixed overhead, you know what, I'm going to rename it here somehow. From inventory. There we go. That makes a little more sense. Okay, fixed overhead included in cost of goods sold from inventory. All right. So, fixed overhead assigned to ending inventory. Well, we didn't put any boats into ending inventory. So, here's what we have here. Total manufacturing overhead included in cost of goods sold. Well, we have this 200,000 right here. I'm going to highlight it. Right there. And we're going to include this right here that also got into cost of goods sold. And so that's going to be a grand total of 240,000. So that is why our cost of goods sold is a lot bigger, a lot bigger. Here's why. I'll put it in English here, okay? What's going on is when you don't produce enough boats, that is, your sales are greater than what you produce, your sales are greater than what you produce, you're going to grab the fixed costs out of inventory and include it in cost of goods sold. So not only do you have your fixed costs for the current year, but you're pulling fixed costs from other years, past years, into cost of goods sold. So cost of goods sold is kind of getting bigger and bigger, because of these fixed costs getting pulled into cost of goods sold. And going up to the very top here, the very, very top. Here we go. Here's the income statement. You can see that cost of goods sold in the second year is quite a bit bigger, even though things really didn't change during the 2 years. They're pretty much the same. So anyways, I've got a question for you guys. See if you guys get this, okay? Here's my question. I've got it down here at the bottom. Moral to the story. When production is less than sales, a portion of fixed overhead costs come out of ending inventory and is expensed in cost of goods sold, in addition to the fixed cost expense for the current year. So a lot of fixed costs are getting pulled into cost of goods sold. So cost of goods sold is kind of exploding in growth. And this happens when production is less than sales. So smart managers, they know about this. They know about this, and so they don't like to have production lower than sales. In fact, from a manager's point of view, if they're being evaluated on net income, it's to their advantage to produce more than what is sold, which isn't really a good idea because that way your inventory builds up and that's not good. So here's my question to you guys. However, is the company really doing worse? So in other words, here we have two income statements side by side, year one and year two. Year one looks great. Year two, not so good. But is the company really doing worse? Or is it our accounting system is messed up, and we can fix it through variable costing, but variable costing is not allowed under generally accepted accounting principles. All right. So, folks, hope this lesson helped you out. Let me know. Hit the like button, the subscribe button. Check out accountingsuperstars.com. All the videos are listed by topic. So until next time, over and out.